Well, thanks and welcome to join me on the 6:15 p.m. news. I'm Kejang Henry Atembe, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Let's get our top stories. Lockdown in the northwest region. The first victim has been recorded in the northwest region of Cameroon ahead of the May 20th ceremony. We are going to have updates in the northwest region. Girls from our northwest regional correspondents. And of course, in Bankanti, a student has stabbed another student, and this student missed that out of her strand. This is the umpteenth time we are having reports of students stabbing another in campuses. And of course, National Day celebrations will be part of our news stories today as the military parade is fine-tuning ahead of May 20th ceremony. Those were our top stories. We have the news right ahead. To join me, you can hook up with us on our Facebook page and, of course, on our YouTube platform. Now we begin from the northwest region of Cameroon, where the current lockdown ahead of the May 20th ceremony has actually produced one victim. In fact, a resident businessman in the northwest region headquarters of Bamenda is known to have suffered a very serious problem. He's popularly known as Simplicity. His home or business unit was razed to ashes yesterday. And of course, despite calls for the Army Rescue Unit to make sure that they come to his rescue, the situation was never put under control. Details from Ambo Gladys with calls from our Northwest Regional Bureau Chief Correspondent, Annie Collins.
This is what remains of the residence of Bamenda-based business tycoon Folemu John on Tuesday, May 17.
We were outside. We did not even know that something was going wrong in front of the kitchen. When I just got up and went behind the kitchen, and I was called by my madam, and I ran to meet her in front of the kitchen, only to discover that there was serious smoke coming out of the house.
A suspected short circuit provoked fire raced down the abodes of the man popularly known as Simplicity, whose household was instead alerted by neighbors as family members were busy in the backyard.
We struggle, say whether we fit enter, pick ID card, no way. As we just show we head for corridor, all fire don't catch all rooms.
All attempts for neighbors to put out the flames by rudimentary methods did not pay off, as not even a pin was saved. Happening on a lockdown day, even soldiers of the Army Rescue Unit did not make it to the disaster site despite multiple phone calls.
With the fire people, we called, nobody came. It was again even a day of vehicles were not moving, we don't know.
Only a nearby car, whose keys had also been burnt inside the house, was successfully dragged away to safety as the Ntarikon-based business magnate Simplicity now stands outside his own house with borrowed clothes.
Thanks very much, Ambo Gladys, with that report. Girls from our Northwest Regional Bureau Chief Correspondent. We are swinging on to the West Region of Cameroon as a secondary school child in Bankanti precisely has actually stabbed his classmate. And this story is the umpteenth of a series of very misfortune incidents that have happened in school campuses across Cameroon. In fact, this mate is under custody, and you are telling us, D. Morin, that the principal of the school is actually accusing parents for not meeting up to their obligations.
He's now out of danger after battling for this with his health. The Form 4 student was stabbed by his mate at his lower abdomen after both were involved in a fight. According to the mother of the stabbed student, his son sent out inappropriate words to the friend who was seen on that fateful day walking the streets with his girlfriend, words that were not appreciated by the latter. My son told me he met the friend on the street walking with a girlfriend. He held her by the hands, and what he asked was if he had already engaged the girl or was married to her. He got annoyed, and when he noticed that his friend was angry, he disappeared. But it seemed he was in search of my son, and the day he met him, he pounced on him and stabbed him on the stomach. The student is reported to have used a table knife to stab his mate. The principal of Collège Jean-Baptiste recognized the student but insists the scene took place some 500 meters from the college. He equally frowns at parents who have abandoned their responsibilities to schools. By this, he insists parents don't control the attitudes of their children in school. Parents enroll children but fail to do what I'll call a strict follow-up of their children in school. They don't check their attitude, they don't follow up their learning, and they don't cross-check if they are in class or not. For the moment, the suspect is behind bars, pending investigations from elements of the gendarmerie.
Morindi reporting there, and DD-2 Cameroonians will in unison commemorate and of course celebrate the National Day come May 20, 2022. And in prelude to such a celebration, we are having reports that rehearsals have been on the way at the boulevard, that is the 20th May Boulevard, in the nation's economic capital. Hashim Chad takes us through this boulevard, or through rather the rehearsals, and this is what he sent for our 6 p.m. news.
The arrival of the president, a replica of what will obtain here with President Paul Biya on May 20th. He moves to the presidential tribune, received by the members of government, watching keenly the final rehearsal of the military march past, here led by Brigadier General Aga Robinson. The different detachments of the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, Special Combined Forces, the National Gendarmerie, the Rapid Intervention Battalion, the Firefighting Brigade, Squadron of the Presidential Guard Foot Troops, as well as the National Police Forces and ex-servicemen and war victims, all fine-tuning their steps at the 20th May Boulevard this Wednesday. And the guests of the 50th edition of the National Day celebration, the detachments of the Congolese Army. A test of the aircraft display. Just like the military, the primary, secondary and higher institutions were here to master the display with patriotic songs. Political parties equally answered present to validate their positions ahead of the D-Day.
Eisencha for that report on the rehearsals of ahead of the 20th May celebration. And now we move to the economy, as the Minister of Finance for the past few days has been discussing with investors of the Central African sub-region, that is the SEMA sub-region, on how to raise about 200 billion CFA francs for investment projects in the country. Now, Gladys Ambo now sought to know from economists and specialists on financial matters on the advantages as well as the disadvantages of public borrowings in the economy. Her report.
The amount needed from CEMAC investors by the Cameroon government is 19.5 billion francs CFA to raise the amount to 200 billion CFA francs. 180 billion francs underwriting had already been guaranteed by arrangers. Economists believe it is quite easy for the government to raise funds through bonds.
When the state is in need of money, it launches for, in fact, it manifests its interest to the Financial Market Surveillance Committee for Central Africa, known by its French acronym as COMASUF, to approve their application to issue bonds. So they have launched for the issue of bonds, which involves Congo and Gabon and then Cameroon. For arrangers, these arrangers are stock exchange actors, and there are 27 banks that are involved that people can get these bonds through them.
The state prefers bond loans because it can easily raise funds from many investors through bond issues at a short notice. But with banks, it takes a longer period to obtain loans. The maturity periods for the bonds is 7 years, including a 2-year grace period, an advantage for investors.
When you borrow to the government, you are very sure that your funds are going to come back. And the next thing with these bonds is the interest rates. They always have very, very attractive interest rates. This year, the rate is as much as 6.25%, which is a very attractive interest rate.
According to economists, investing in government's bonds equally has its drawbacks.
You might not withdraw your funds on call. When you want your money, you must wait for the 5 years plus the 2 years grace period. So you can't withdraw your funds.
The 2022 bond loans will finance projects such as road infrastructure, reconstruction of disaster areas, and urban development works.
Abo Gladys reporting there. We thank you very much. And despite some challenges noticed, especially during the past years of the armed conflicts in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, the banana sector is actually scaling up in Cameroon. An ultra-modern joint fruit terminal has been inaugurated by the Minister Delegate of the Economic Planning and Regional Development, and of course is going to integrate issues of handling of the port sector in bananas, as we hear in the following reports. That is, of course, opening the market to European Union. The banana sector in Cameroon is measuring up with international norms as the European Union has freed its market by 100%. The modernization of the banana and fruit terminal at the Douala seaport is certainly going to be a boost that has acquired ultra-modern handling facilities sponsored by the European Union.
We have an economic partnership agreement signed between the EU and Cameroon, and within that context we have freed the access to the European market for all products of Cameroon origin, including, of course, bananas. As was said by the Minister, bananas is one of the main export products of Cameroon. The
4.7 billion francs facility was commissioned on May 17, 2022 by the Minister Delegate to the Ministry of the Economy, Planning and Regional Development, Paul Tasson.
We are just inaugurating a very important and vital infrastructure for one of the most valuable agricultural fruits of Cameroon. The immediate impact of this modernized mixed fruit terminal helps drop the price from 8,000 francs a ton to 4,850 francs a ton. That's exactly what we were looking for.
Hampered by some challenges, Cameroon hopes to scale up its banana export to about 300,000 tons by 2022 and to provide some 15,000 direct jobs.
Banana, we deal with a fruit which is very, very sensitive. Anything that you can do to reduce the time from when you produce in the farms to when you send to the ripening houses in the place of export, in our case Europe, any time reduction for that is very, very essential.
Banana was third on the list of Cameroon's export in 2021, thanks to Cameroon's membership of the African, Caribbean and Pacific Organization, the ACP. Thanks very much for that report. And we're moving up to Yaoundé to talk about clinical research trial that is underway in Yaoundé. And of course, it is relating in the conduct of what has been known as research efforts. Beatrice Ngamo is our Yaoundé Bureau Chief Correspondent. She sends this report.
With the adoption of the bill relating to medical research involving human subjects, particularly during clinical trials at the National Assembly, last April the 27th, time to facilitate the implementation. And here is that guide, 190-page document to help researchers and officials in charge of clinical trials in simple language to the advantage of both researchers and concerned persons.
All those who are concerned by the clinical research will be aware of what are the rights and obligation.
Clinical trials are research studies performed in people aimed at evaluating a medical, surgical, or behavioral intervention. The primary ways researchers find out if a new treatment, like new drugs or diet or medical device, is safe and effective in people.
To give a guidance to the researchers and also to the population about what can be done, what cannot be done.
Though clinical trial research represents just 6% of protocol activities in the annual review. The validation of the guide on the review of research protocol and that relating to the conduct of clinical trials after 2 days of discussion will help in
the protection of the population, the protection of the participant to clinical trials, and the second thing will be necessarily also the promotion of research.
Needs for the strengthening of the pharmaceutical sector, having a regulatory framework for clinical trials. The project is part of the European and developing countries clinical trials partnership. The validation workshop was opened this Wednesday by the Secretary General at the Ministry of Public Health, Louis Richard.
Well, thanks, Beatrice Ngamo reporting there. And of course, that item brings us to the end of this newscast. I've been Kejang Henry. I thanking you for having been part of us in this edition of the 6:15 p.m. news. We are going to have more news, of course, at 7.